Alright, you guys, just wanted to make a quick little video, just introduce some art to the channel. This is just going to be a little bit of my process work. Just gonna dub over a really, good, quick, easy time lapse of how I did the value pass for one of the drawings that I've recently put up on my Instagram. And if you guys want to follow that, it's at Thanes366 with no space and no capital letters. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So kicking off here, we already have the line work done and dusted. Not particularly pleased with how the hands have turned out, but to begin with, let's just get this mask all dialed in. Just using a ballpoint pen here, just keeping it nice, classy, and easy for myself. And then we're going to move on to the rest of the respirator mask and sort of spiral outwards as we get this whole facial area completed. I've decided that the light source is going to be from the top right, and just to occupy my brain while I'm drawing here, I'm calling a very good friend of mine. That's why you guys saw that weird camera shift there. And then as we continue around, we just want to make sure we darken the bottom of this mask and make sure it really transfers out and pops out. What I was super duper worried about doing during this was losing a lot of our shapes, because ballpoint pen is something that's particularly hard to keep values different from each other, because the only real things you have are line width and line distance from each other. You can't really, pressure doesn't change that much when it comes to a ballpoint pen. So yeah, we're moving on around to the little details of our mask, and we're sort of setting up the rest of the respirator area, just getting that general shadow down and dusted. Get a little bit distracted here, coloring in the bottom of the mask, the bottom of the hood where our Frogman's chin is. In case you guys didn't know, this is a Russian military frogman. Was inspired to do it off of the song Baby Driver by Simon and Garfunkel. And then we're going to come around and just throw in some value to this hood that our frogman is wearing, and then we are back right on to detailing out this mask. Was super confused as to what exactly to do with the mirrored area on the goggles that we wanted to do. Through the little bit of the fish in the reflection, and we sort of commit without planning anything out, which it usually goes well for me. So I think that is quite fantastic. Fill out that bottom part of his head, really just define it away as like the bottom plane of his head, and make it really dark, since our light source is from the upper right hand side, sort of in the middle of the page area, right on top of the fish, and a bit further back in space. So we're going in and we're trying to get this metallic texture to show up on his respiration unit. And you guys can also see my very unhealthy way of holding a pen, kind of like a bird would hold a pen. And then here we can just see how I commit to drawing in this monstrosity of a reflection. But I think personally it doesn't turn out too badly. Just hopping back to the reference here, and then we are back onto the gun, just trying to see a mirror image just roughly in perspective. I think personally it turned out quite alright. Alright, and then moving past that little block in for our reflection there, we hop into the body and the neck area, kind of get distracted quite a lot, and then before we do that, really start to focus on the tubing leading up to his respiratory device. So that is going to take quite a little bit. Just moving on through the respiratory device and really getting that shape down. Super duper, it's probably the most time consuming part of this drawing so far. Just really defining out that edge and making sure that the tubing pops out. You can really tell that it's in front of the mask and it doesn't really blend in. We go back in and I get distracted trying to fix up that reflection a little bit, and then we just add in a little bit of detail there. Just make sure we get that atmospheric perspective in the reflection, showing that things are getting further away, and then just adding a little bit of water texture at the top of the goggle. And then we are back on to just making sure that everything is nice and defined. As of right now, I was super duper occupied with making things pop, and then we are back onto the tubing, which once again, as I said, is a time-consuming process. So you see me getting distracted off and finishing the hood for our little Frogman guy here. So we work that hood out, and then we're working his shoulder out, and then we are bouncing right back onto just his sleeve, I guess. Yeah, that's where I went next. The idea with the sleeve is you want to copy that fabric texture, so it's like sort of that sleeve end that's a little bit stretchy, and then we want to put in some simulation of fabric here that's like wrapped and rolled around his arm. And I think it was a fairly well done job, considering that underwater physics is not a thing that I know very well with fabric, and that his hand is a little bit janky and his anatomy is a little bit off from our base drawing. But I think that's okay because it's part of pushing that perspective. And then me being me, we finish up a backpack strap, and then we are back right on to finishing this pipe that brings him air, and we are just going to blast all the way through it. So we're just gonna let me do some drawing here as we draw all of these little donuts all the way down to his little backpack where he presumably has an air supply. And maybe it's like an older rebreather, because I know this picture came from like the 70s, 80s era, so rebreather technology was not all that common. And then you can see here I am getting a little bit of a cast shadow going, or at least I should, if I remember properly. Oh, okay, we're going to define out his little backpack contraption, and then we're going to get our little bit of cast shadow in there, and then we're just going to move it onto his body there. Alright, gonna finish up detailing these pipes and just making sure everything pops and we don't lose any of our shapes, just by going around and darkening some things. And lightning is not lightening, not lightning. There's no electricity going on here. We are going to take a little break here, I guess, and then we are right on to his hands. And then I get distracted again and figure, wow, these things aren't popping enough, so I always just bounce back and forth. I take my hand away, I take a larger look at it, take a little break, and just make sure I assess everything and it all looks good. So we're hopping in here, really filling out the values for this left hand thumb for our little frogman, and just really kind of blast some value on there. Since this is going to be on the shadow side, I figure it's going to be a little bit darker. And then I realized part ways through this that, dang, that thumb is super duper tiny. But I think that the value of our little fire water arm is going to help us, just extend that out a little bit and make it seem larger than it actually is. I get distracted with the mask again, as you do. And then we are on to work on this little portion down here, just trying to fill out the contour of the bottom side of the arm. And then we just really try and get this whole hand shape in there. So we will just let me contour in some of these fingers, and then we'll just see how we cope with doing this whole hand. I know that the palm sort of section, or the back of the palm, is a bit too large, so I try and darken it out a bit just to give that visual illusion that, it's not actually as large as it seems. And then I just throw in a whole range of values here just to make sure that it's on the shadow side of our drawing and it doesn't stick out too much. And then on top of that, we also add some detailing, some shadows for veins and capillaries. Capillaries, is that the right word? Veins and what's the other? Arteries. Yeah, that. Not capillaries. Maybe capillaries? I don't know. I'm gonna fail my health test. However, we blast in this hand super duper quick, and then it's right on to the grip of our gun. Just one nice solid value gonna throw in here. Maybe make the little grippy part a little bit denser in lines, and then I get distracted and I finish up the hand. And then we finish up the opposite side finger, and it's on to the rest of the gun here. Fill in that trigger dark, super black, so it stands out from the opposing finger, which is also quite dark. And then we get that all done and dusted. We just really contour around this side of the gun, making sure that there's a good light source on top. And so we give it that good reflective metal looking sheen. And then we get distracted and color in this fish and give it some scales and give it like, wow, it's darker on this side, cool. And then I think we get a little bit distracted with the turtle too, which is a little bit off the screen, but what can you do? I can't shift this camera back in post. And then we're just gonna throw in a couple bubbles here for fun, of course. Why else would I do something? Just for fun. And then we throw a little bubble in that reflection too. And then I am going to fill out the rest of his shoulder. That's my elbow. Just leaning on the table there a little bit. And then we're on to the opposite side sleeve, just doing the same thing we did with the closer sleeve, just giving it that good fabric texture and making sure that we have the light, linear light direction, so that we can differentiate, wow, something is closer in the light, and it really gives it that good contour. And I think I did a fairly alright job there, giving the fabric a good floaty water look. It's full of water. And then we're just going to finish up here on the seahorse, making it all nice and textured. Kind of struggled a bit with how it looked because of our line work was kind of meh. But blame past me for past me's mistake. And then we are just going to finish up this drawing here, and we're going to close it on up by darkening the barrels of the gun, and then just wrapping it right up. Just put on all of the final touches on his body and on his hands, and then that should be just about it. You guys, we are going to wrap up today's video. If you guys liked this and you want to see more art hit the channel, please do let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it, feel free to like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. And, you know, make sure you guys stay safe. And that's all from me. I've been your host, Thane. Peace out.